All right, so we're back for another episode of Higher Margins with me, your host, Brett Puppenbarger. And today it's a little bit of a different take because I'm joined by not one, but two human beings. And that's too many for me to fucking remember names and backgrounds and all of the different things. So I'm just going to let them talk about themselves for a couple of minutes. John, go ahead and go first.
No problem. All I do is talk about myself. So my name is John Nathan. I'm the CEO and founder of Bay State Extracts. We are a hemp cannabinoid processor, manufacturer, and supplier based in Wareham, Massachusetts.
So you're a drug dealer. Got it.
Yes, proud.
Moving on.
Proud.
Carl, how about you, man?
I'm co-founder of Trade Routes, Massachusetts' first vertically integrated social equity operator, also based in Wareham, Massachusetts.
So, do you guys go way back? You met each other through weed? How does that fucking work? Because I watch you guys talk shit a lot on the internet with each other, and I think it's friendly. You might hate each other. I don't know.
Well, I don't hate him. I just don't like him. No. What it was we met through a former employee of Trade Routes that I knew that had started working for Carl. Told me I have to meet Carl and that he's a great guy. We don't talk anymore because of that lie. But when I first met Carl, we immediately bonded. I'm from New Jersey. He is from, I guess, New York or Connecticut or something, but he spent enough time in New York to understand my flavor. And, where we're from, ribbing each other and talking shit is a term of endearment. It's if I don't make fun of you, we're not really that cool, so the more you see me making fun of Carl, the more I like him. So that's what it is. But I don't like him.
I accept that.
I'm working on
it. So let's get into some basic questions, guys. Long story short, you've both been in the weed game a little bit of time. You have some interesting perspectives. Do you think cannabis attracts a certain kind of people, like a certain psychological profile, a certain je ne sais quoi of a human being? And do you think that shit's changed over the years?
Want to take it first, John? Or?
Yeah, I'll give you my take. I think it inherently attracts a very specific demographic. I think less neurotypical people that think a little bit outside of the bounds. But I do believe that demographic is shifting. My take is that, there's a traditional market and industry that will play in the regulated industry, but the consumer base of the regulated industry is not always receptive to that traditional market. Your majority of dispensary customers are typically 30, 35 plus women, groups less likely to want to meet a strange guy in a parking lot off Snapchat for a bag of weed. So I think that it's opened up to a less initiated crowd, which is great in terms of consumption, but that crowd doesn't go online and talk about weed. They make their purchase, they go home, and that is the extent of their involvement in cannabis. So I think community definitely attracts people of a common feather. Whereas I believe now that it's been regulated and proliferated and softened, and we've seen, less drug war propaganda around it, you're starting to realize that like the base of that regulated industry are people who you would never guess. It's my thought.
Carl?
So I think the one commonality between at least a lot of the founders in Massachusetts that I've met is we're all a little bit fucking nuts. Like to have a career and all of that and then go, you know what? We're gonna take a risk. We're gonna stop whatever we're doing to feed our families and all of that, and sort of roll the dice in a highly regulated, semi-legal-ish, frontier market. Takes a certain kind of person. The amount of creativity that I've seen from people in this industry, like just teaching the horse to push the cart, is the I mean, think about, what it takes to stand up a cannabis business, right? I mean, it's everything from real estate to law to all of this stuff. I think it takes a special kind of person. And John, talking about community, I think earlier on, we did see sort of the two groups, right? Like, I'm going to say the suits, who a lot of them, at least in Massachusetts, had like a political background. Surprising number. I found it surprising the number of people, at least Massachusetts operators, that were, whether lobbyists or that kind of stuff, political, whatever, consultants. And then there was sort of the community. Well, the number, community being people that were involved in the traditional market prior to this. And I think a lot of those folks that maybe were in the wannapreneur stage, if they haven't launched at this point, have sort of moved on to whatever the next thing is. And seeing operators that are, mom and dad that are building a business for their son who is into weed, or all sorts of that stuff. So I think I agree with John, it has evolved over time.
I think a lot of those people got disenfranchised. They speaking on those two broad groups, I think a lot of people don't realize how much this needs to be a yin and a yang. I have no qualms about saying out loud that I'm not a cannabis activist, because I'm not willing to get arrested for this. If weed was made illegal again tomorrow, I would still smoke it, but I wouldn't break the law. I would go find something comfortable, and that's okay. Instead of
fucking sell coffee straight up.
I mean,
I would just jump straight into, like, I'd try to open a fucking coffee shop or some shit.
I mean, and trust me, it sounds attractive now, even, to be in something less regulated. My wife is setting up a secondhand shop 2 doors down from us. And I'm like, the insurance policy is our monthly payment. You know what I mean? And they roll out a red carpet. I've never set up a company that wasn't strenuous, but I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, you need somebody who understands the intricacies of quality hash and what goes into it and what those consumers want. And then there also has to be somebody who knows what EBITDA is. You know what I mean? So, like, there has to be that balance, because, again, your traditional market guy told you he'll be there in 5 minutes and left you in Home Depot for 3 hours, twiddling your thumbs. And then that suit that, smokes their floor trim pre-roll once a year to get wacky at during golf, is also grossly disconnected between what it takes. So that balance of, like, corporate and culture is so necessary. But, like, one side's going, I don't want this dirty hippie in my office, and the other side's going, I don't want this big tooth Chad telling me what to do, when, he was an investment banker fucking a year ago. You know what I mean? So it's like, who are you to tell me about hash? But at the same time, just because you can make good hash doesn't mean you know how to, analyze your cogs and
Run
do
a
market
fucking
research. And so, like, that acumen is crucial for success. But at the same time, if you're disconnected from the culture, you're not going to have that hard landing. Being good at something doesn't mean you're going to be successful in this industry. 90% of it's marketing. You know what I mean? And kitschy phrases and cool kids clubs and who gets drunk at what events. That's how you make it. And I think that rattles the brains of both sides. You know what I mean? Like, the people that call weed a CPG and speak completely in corporate speak, they don't understand why I'm the best and this isn't working. And then the hash bros, they don't ever understand that, your average consumer is looking for the cheapest way to get stoned tonight, and they don't really care about your 3-stage filtration process. So it's that messaging. How do you make a 40-year-old mom care about your corporate structure as well as your ties to the plant, when all they want is, like, what's affordable and what's going to do the job? So
when you talk about the the people at conferences and that kind of thing, like the cool kids club part, I'll never forget. I had a doctor, like a medical doctor, that I was working on a license with down in Florida a couple of years ago, and I brought him to a cannabis conference, and he was, like, walking around with me, an older guy, like in his 80s, And he's like, this is so weird. And I'm like, I had to break the news to him that like the dude with rolled up sweatpants and a backpack had a higher net worth than the guy that showed up in his rented Ferrari. And he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, you don't like the lines don't add up to what you're seeing. Like there's a whole different set of rules floating around this world. It's let me throw out another question. So both of you guys have been, I'll call it successful. You'll probably argue that one way or the other. Either say you're more successful than I think you are or less. Doesn't really fucking matter. Both of you guys have been successful, right? You've managed to do something most people can't in a very difficult industry. You know, we're talking about how fucking hard cannabis is, whether it's on the regulated side or the hemp side. It doesn't really matter. We're playing with a ludicrous set of rules. Do you think that success comes more from a deep understanding of like business and the rules and the shit, or understanding people, or just sheer dumb fucking luck?
Well, certainly dumb fucking luck is a big part of it. I mean, you know, as much as in this industry, operators will, you know, talk about, well, this bad thing happened and that bad thing happened. I mean, I still remember the morning where it's like 7:30, I'm at the building and there's a used tire store that's at a higher elevation off the same cul-de-sac. And I get a phone call saying, Carl, the dam that the cranberry bog owners had for their reservoir just breached and water's rapidly approaching your building. Now,
Wait. Was it fucking the nasty spider water? Because, right, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but cranberry bogs are like fucking full of spiders. So you basically had to live through 8-legged freaks?
I did not know that at the time. I found out that afterwards, and there were no 8-legged freaks, but the water came maybe 18 inches from the building. And it was funny because our general counsel was there, and I'm like, you know, okay, well, worst case, if this hits the building, it's covered by insurance. And he's like, no, it's not, force majeure. And I'm like, well, what about, well, obviously we could sue the cranberry bog company. He's like, yeah, prove that was their negligence. No, you're not going to get paid. It's like, all right, then just go fucking inside. Like, I don't need this right now. And the water came up and then started to recede. So there's certainly the luck piece. You know, I think for trade routes, we were fortunate because my business partner, Jesse, was in the traditional market. You know, he gets asked the question at, you know, when he's speaking, you know, so when did you get into cannabis, right? The genesis story. We said, what did you do before cannabis? And his answer is always 7th grade. So like, he's been in this, a lot of our team was from the traditional market. And so, I mean, Brett, I had some, it's funny. I think I don't know when the spray pack was invented, but I remember inventing it in 2018. I'm like, dude, I have this great idea. We could take terpenes and spray the inside of the packaging. So when it opens up, and Jesse's just looking at me, he's like, we're never doing that. That's the dumbest fucking idea in the world. And I've had a lot of those. So it's been, you know, and certainly Jesse is both traditional market and, I mean, he's, you know, people think because my background, I was a trader, that, you know, I managed the books and all of that. Absolutely not. That was Jesse. And so I think for us, the blend of both sort of made sense, that every time I had a, you know, stupid idea, he tells me it's a stupid idea. And, you know, sometimes when there's like a shiny object to be chased, I've been able to kind of look at the market and go, hey, maybe, you know, we shouldn't do that. And so, you know, I think for us, it's a blend plus a bunch of dumb luck and an amazing team. I mean, that's, you know, Jesse and I stopped, you know, it's like, oh, you guys did this great thing. It's like, we haven't done that in years. Like a village did that. And, you know, so having the right people in the right seats on the bus is so important.
My perspective to that is I do believe there's a lot of lightning in a bottle. What I really think is that there's a lot of very similar products competing on marketing. Some of the most successful brands are not really manufacturers, they're marketing companies that happen to have a manufacturing wing. So, I mean, when you talk about like lightning in a bottle, I mean, how many 5 milligram THC distillate gummies are in Massachusetts? If you were one of the first 5, you have a market share. That's lightning in a bottle. But at the same time, in order to emerge into that market, it does require some business acumen. So it's definitely a merge of the two, knowing when to enter the market. But I think in order to maintain success, one of the key elements is understanding your demographic and understanding economically where they're at. I saw somebody the other day on LinkedIn, and they were talking about how they're bringing high-end hash rosin to Massachusetts, and you get ready because we're going to launch this state. No one needs $90 grams of hash rosin right now. And if you look at it from a business perspective, we're 90 minutes from Maine, where there's $20 grams of literal fire with less regulation and less overhead and less headaches, and a medical card's $29 and you could get one in the parking lot. Like, they don't have that red tape. So if someone is really dedicated to that high-end hash, they're driving to Maine. That's what I do if I want high-end hash. So not knowing where the market is at right now, it can lead to a downfall. Producing products that people buy once a year, you see a lot of that. Producing products that are novelty, trying to reinvent the wheel when no one asked you to. Everything's a game changer, but none of these game changers have ever changed the game. At the end of the day, the vast majority of people are going to smoke a joint. Our facility has taken the plant, separated it, conducted experiments, we've reacted with catalysts, we've practiced synthetic operations, we've done this, we've done that, we've tweaked this, we've done that, and I go home and smoke a joint. You know what I mean? So like here is somebody that is like front seat to just how intricate and deep the plant gets, and I just want to smoke a joint, man. So I think there's a lot of people that come in and they're like, we're going to do this, and this, and it's never been done before. Well, it's never been done before for a reason, and it's because nobody wants it. You know what I mean? Grow good weed, build a good culture around it, pick a good location, and have it at high quality at a good price, and hopefully enter the market at the most apt time, and that's a recipe for success. But you're also, to alleviate some of that, it's also on the regulators, approving 1 million grows and manufacturers and saturating the market and saying, good luck, guys. So you could have all the business sense in the world. You could have the right timing, the right entry, and just get completely screwed by some independent government body.
That's a pet peeve of mine. I make the joke when I do other people's podcasts all the time, like cannabis exists on a scale from Oklahoma to Florida, where it's like Florida basically like stacked the deck. Like, here's 8 licenses for 300,000 patients. Fuck it. Here's your money printing machine. You can put out the shittiest weed in the world and they're going to buy it because where the fuck else are they going to get it? Versus Oklahoma, 3 million people in the whole state. What did they have? 18,000 licenses? At one point, it was like 104 people per license. Yeah, okay. Right, so we like live on this thing. How has no one, I'm not the guy, so just so we're fucking clear, I'm not the guy, but how has nobody done like the demand planning math of the appropriate amount of licenses to support something, right? Like they do it for other industries. We're only going to give out X number of ABC liquor licenses to this many bars because, whatever, 58% of adults drink alcohol at least once a month, and right? Like, you guys get what I'm saying with that. Like, there is some real fucking math there.
Yes.
They do.
But
how has nobody done that for weed anywhere?
Well, when you set those kind of caps, you set it up for favoritism, nepotism, and crony capitalism. You know what I mean? So then you're in this situation because, look, I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and the liquor license depends on how much the one selectman enjoys your restaurant. You know what I mean? So then you find your way where it's, the most well-connected are given that small gap. Plymouth, Massachusetts, where I live, they decided they were going to cap licenses at 4 total and only roll out 2 in the beginning. And they did that. They took the medical that was there, which is vertically integrated, and screw it, not really known for great quality. They're not going to watch this. And if they are, oh well, place an order and I'll shut up. So they, don't really do a great job. And then there's one other dispensary, and the number 1 dispensary in the area is in the neighboring town right on the line, Elevated Roots. and they pull everybody from the area because they built the culture, and they were the first license to open up in that town. But by limiting in Plymouth, they sent all of that local tax revenue to their neighbor. And so yeah, I worry about crony capitalism when it comes to like lotteries, and we're going to be super selective of who gets in and who gets out. I feel like that gives more power to the government rather than just letting everybody apply and approving it on the merits of their application. But again,
on the flip side of that, then you end up with fucking Oklahoma, where you have a trail of dead licenses and hopes and dreams crushed. And I'm not saying it has to be like highly regulated, but I also think like you guys up in New England, like my wife's from Maine, right? We go up there pretty regularly. Like I love New England. We drive through New England all the time. How many fucking states do you see a billboard saying, just hop the border and buy the weed? Because like, what is it? Like Massachusetts, I can't remember. One of the states you couldn't have billboards. So they just put all the billboards like 4 minutes over the border in the other state to advertise for the shit in their state. Was it Massachusetts and Connecticut, or Massachusetts?
Rhode Island.
One of those, like I remember just sitting there thinking like, I know it's not the state that has the stupid wiggly sided borders that look like a poll ticket. I think that's Connecticut. I don't know, whatever. They all kind of blend together in my mind. No offense to you, like
no, and
Eastern folks, but like it's so fucking weird that like people can't even advertise in their own state, but they're advertising next door, and then it's like neither set of regulators are going, huh?
Yeah, I think that the main issue when it comes to allowing that saturation is who gets harmed. Okay, it's the operators, right? But the consumer's fine. I mean, if you approve 1 million licenses, that's 1 million options for them. They're fine. Okay, the state is still going to get that tax revenue, whether they get it from them or them or them. So they have no inclination to protect the market. So really, it's just the idiots like us who decide, I'm going to jump into an emerging industry and throw all my money at it and see what happens, and then we get harmed. But unless the state is getting hurt or the consumer is getting hurt, no one gives a shit.
But the reality, I mean, so we had a meeting, Trade Routes had a meeting.
Sorry to do this, but 1 second. I'll be back. You could talk.
So Trade Routes, we had a meeting. We called a meeting with the commission. This is maybe 2.5 years ago. So the price of cannabis was still about above $12 a gram. It's now $3.31 as of April. And so Massachusetts has a provision in the regs for tier relegation. And what it states is if you don't sell, I believe it's 75% of your product, if you're an indoor grow within 6 months of harvest, or if you're an outdoor grow, there's a thing, the commission has the right to turn down lights. And one of the nice things about the way the mass regs are is they open data. So you could take a look, you could see all the licenses, and, so I just started doing some math. And, the way mass rolled out was interesting. So, mass basically became rec legal right as COVID hit. And so, if you take a look at the price of cannabis in the Western states, you sort of see the fall, and then you have that first bump and then back down, and you can sort of take a look at the slope of the line, and we made some predictions in our models for that. What we didn't account for was that you'd have a pandemic, that the government would say you are virtuous to stay home and smoke weed. Oh, by the way, here's a check to do it. And so the price, if you take a look, like I guess high tick was like mid 14s a gram. And then for almost a couple of years, it went down to like 12. But when you took a look at the CCC licensing data, I think the way the math worked was for every 100,000 square feet of cultivation, the price of an eighth on the shelf went down by $1. That seemed to be sort of the rough math I was able to come up with. And so, but the commission never exercised tier relegation. Apparently they're talking about it now. But the problem is when you're saying it doesn't harm the consumer, it does. And we saw today Mass had it wasn't a recall, but 7,600 products were marked as potentially being dangerous for micro and myclo stuff because of a lab that allegedly did some stuff. But when you have pressures like this and people have invested their lives in millions of dollars and investor money and may have personal guarantees and all of this stuff, that creates perverse incentives to cheat. And so if the point of the commission, the point of a regulated market is to protect consumers, then creating an environment where operators are effectively perversely incentivized to do things that may not be great for the consumer, regulators have to understand that. Like, you know, all of us put our lives into this. And, you know, when people get desperate, people do desperate things. And if you also take the mindset of risk takers to stand this stuff up, well, maybe some of those people would be willing to take risks. And unfortunately for operators who aren't, that's extra pressure, because now you're not just competing against honest operators, you're competing against cheaters. And, you know, I mean, if you take a look at California, you know, California, what 20% of the weed that's grown in California gets actually sold in California and the rest gets destroyed. But yet I go visit my
go to New York City, right? Like go to every bodega in the middle of Times Square and it's backdoored product.
Well, dude, Mike, the founder of Church, I remember we had a meeting this a couple years ago, and he took brass knuckles off the market, 5 years ago? And I sent him a picture. I was at a bodega in Midtown, and they're selling brass knuckles. And that hasn't even, I mean, it's a counterfeit product from the West Coast that hasn't even been on the market back then during that time. So, you know, I mean, you have entire markets and you have publicly traded companies that we all know. We all know that's, you know, the stuff gets picked up, burner distro, and just sort of disappears and heads out to the East Coast. So it's like this problem is happening in all sorts of markets. And so I do think regulators need to be cognizant of, okay, you know, you set this up this way. Yeah, we could all pinky swear that we're going to do the right thing, but not everybody does the right thing.
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting segue. I didn't plan on going this direction. I'm totally kind of abandoning the questions for a few minutes. So you guys come from kind of two different worlds, right? Like one side's the regulated, semi-regulated hemp world. The other side is from the totally regulated world. Do you consider it the same world? Do you consider them separate worlds? Do you consider them competitive worlds? Like, how do you rectify the two sides of the coin? Because I think the side it used to be suits versus stoners. Now it's hemp guys versus weed guys, but it's all weed guys, but it's not. Unpack it for me.
So, I mean, okay, so two different hats, right? There's the hat where I am a fiduciary for my company, for our investors' money, for, you know, assurances were made when we made this investment, that certain things were, and all of that, right? So that's, you know, looking at it one way. You know, you know, it's hard to be a principled libertarian when your paycheck is dependent on other, you know, dependent on, you know, restricted licenses. I mean, I don't understand if they're, you know, and everyone talks about this, but like nobody's overdosed. This isn't really a thing. It's a plant. I don't understand why it shouldn't be sold at farmers markets. Like all of this stuff, like from like philosophically. But I also understand why moonshining law, like as a kid, I never understood, like, why is moonshining a thing? Like, why would that be illegal? Taxes, money, all of it, right? So, you know, do I think that when the hemp bill was originally, or the farm bill was originally contemplated, that intoxicating hemp and, you know, THCOP and all of this shit was, you know, what Mitch McConnell had in mind? No, I don't. I also think that these you know, it is weird that now all of a sudden you have, you talked about, you know, suits versus we're now infighting as state governments and the federal government it's like, we shouldn't be fighting with each other. Like, I mean, that's just sort of like, if as a whole, we want this to progress, I do get the side, you know, with the hemp stuff that, you know, that it expands access, especially in states that don't have programs and all of this stuff. Get that. Also, it really sucks that, you know, we sold hemp beverages for $7 and you had to pay 20% tax.
Can I fuck with your brain for a minute, Carl? Can I totally fuck with your brain? Like, let's go down the principled libertarian path for a minute, right? So, like, let's go all the way down that path to agorism and voluntarianism. The very core aspect of a libertarian world belief is a lack of coercion. And most of the hemp bros are straight up fucking lying. So how does that factor into your thought process, right? So like I get you, like, yeah, it should be sold at a farmer's market, but palladium catalysts and like all kinds of acids and not telling the truth about what they are. Or my favorite is like there's two kinds of HHC and like which one am I getting? How do you know? Like yeah, there's two different HHCs. They're made differently.
Can you explain?
Yeah. So basically, these people hydrogenate cannabinoids, roll the dice, send it into a lab. They create a standard. If the deviation from that standard, it gets a new standard name. Some analytical guy will probably tell me I'm wrong, but that's like the meat and potatoes of it.
Hexahydroxy versus hydroxyhexanaldehyde something. Like they're.
Here's the thing. As a former libertarian, it's romanticized, this idea of this free market where everyone does the right thing. But 100% of history shows that consolidation of capital in any regards never benefits the consumer or the general public. It just doesn't happen. There has to be an FDA, otherwise there's going to be lead in your toothpaste. So while I do understand the core of it, you know, and I say the same thing that Carl just said, you know, I do have private and public stances about this. My private stance is I think weed should be sold at AutoZone. You know what I mean? You should be able to get it literally absolutely anywhere. It's a legal commodity. Screw you. I want to sell it. In the same vein, look what happens when there's no regulation. Okay. THCO acetate. There is a study. It exists, it is published, it is visible, that says that when you heat that up, it produces ketones that are dangerous for your health. Every once in a while, I would just post that up and go, hey, if you make THCO carts, now that you've seen this, you are willfully choosing to harm people. So I do have, you know, and I agree with the coercion. Look, the non-aggression axiom is a core principle for me. That's one thing I kept with me from my libertarian days. Murray Rothbard, you don't exert any sort of violence against anyone unless they are a direct threat to your immediate safety or property. Yes, exactly. You know what I mean? I used to have a hissing snake on my leg before the crazies co-opted that logo. But, you know, understanding that, I'm consistently having to explain to legislators why I'm not the same hemp as them. Okay. Now, granted, I don't have this huge barrier of entry like many of them did, many on the marijuana side did, but there still is a seven-figure sizable investment into my operation. And what I am doing is 100% in the spirit of why hemp was legalized. There's a reason why that language said all derivatives and you know, isomers and everything that comes from the plant, because there is a therapeutic and medicinal benefit. What we do, I have never been at odds with marijuana, and not because the government didn't allow me to. I could have been selling THC gummies for the last 5 years without getting in trouble and making way more money than I am, but because of principle. You know, I'm 5 minutes down the street from a husband and wife, small business owned, you know, manufacturer of gummies. They raised money, you know, through friends, family, or however means. I'm not speaking specifically. They applied for a license. They got an LOI. They paid rent on a building that they couldn't make money out of for a predetermined time. They stayed up late. They paid lawyers. They paid I mean, shit, the security alone, you're looking at 50, 60K. And then they go live, and now they can make a 5 milligram gummy. They could sell it in these very specific age gated retails. But the smoke shop just a block down, I'm able to put gummies in there. They're 30 milligrams if it meets that 0.3%. So again, in the spirit of a free market, which I personally believe is a teenage fantasy, and that most people would crumble under a true free market. I don't feel like renting my sidewalk from Jeff Bezos, but sure, whatever. Fictional universe, no boom and bust cycles. If we allow all the corporations to have all the power and all the capital, they'll just do the right thing. Okay. But I don't believe in that. So like, yes, in the essence of that, you know, people should be allowed to sell these products because they meet the legal definition, but does it benefit the consumer? I don't know. It also confuses the consumer, okay? Because at some point there will be federal legalization and literally nobody is ever going to say THCA hemp again. That phrase will be nuked out of orbit the second there is federal legalization, including interstate commerce. We will never have to say that again. So why are you conditioning and grooming people to believe that this category exists? Because then we're going to be in the same situation where we are, where we're now almost a decade into legalization and we still haven't broken from indica couch and sativa wakes you up. So we're still pretending that plant morphology has anything to do with effects. So we've shown that like when you groom and condition your consumer to say dumb things that aren't real, it's very hard to shake that. You know, so we don't go by Bay State Hemp anymore. That's the name I registered. That's how I present to the state and legally. But we're Bay State Extracts because guess what? If you told me to go to a convention and go hang out with the big power players of hemp, I'm all set. First off, the room would probably smell terrible. And then also on top of that, none of these people are philosophically aligned with what I'm doing. I'm in this space because CBN changed my life in 2016 and I couldn't find it anywhere. It's the only reason I'm doing this. I'm not in this for any other reason. I'm never going to grow. I could kill a plant by looking at it. So I have absolutely no other avenue. So I found my niche. Okay. And in talking back on business acumen, you know why I do this? Because I looked at the market and it didn't exist. I was a consumer. I was a medical patient. I couldn't get what helped me and nobody knew what I was talking about. So I started in 2019 and by the January 2021, we had passed a law, got everything legalized that we can transact and we began supplying CBN. So now CBN is in every single dispensary. Almost every manufacturer makes something with it. It's plentiful. And I would say probably 90 to 95% of it comes from me. And that was my personal mission. And it's accomplished. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to stay here and we're going to do our thing. But guess what? I've had to testify in the last month against 4 bills because people don't understand what a cannabinoid is. And so it's totally fine. You guys want to abuse loopholes. That's great. But you push the envelope and then there's an overcorrection by a bunch of uneducated legislators trying to do the right thing. They want to protect kids. They want to protect public health. And I agree. You know, so again, in spirit, sure. But once again, we have been shown what happens. You know what I mean? When you allow guys who get banned from Applebee's to just sell whatever the hell they want online to whoever and cosplay as chemists. So, you know, I block most hemp guys because there's a philosophical disconnect and you've made it so that the industry I'm in, I'm ashamed to say out loud because of how bad you've obfuscated what that word means. And this is the second cohort of people screwing over others in the name of hemp. This is just the intoxicating phase. Don't forget about the $190 bottles of isolate tincture that were sold at gas stations, ripping off regular people, you know? So like, we've never done right by the word hemp. So when I go on my rants, I get accused all the time of being a marijuana operator because of how vicious I attack those that have put the word hemp in this position. And that's fine. I'm totally cool with it. And I side with cannabis over hemp because they took the real risk. Like I pay $400 for a license. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I've had like 2 audits in the last 5 years. My records were looked at last year and that was it. I could be doing whatever I want here. Okay. And then there's people down the street, you know what I mean? Where, you know, if somebody doesn't sign their little guest book before they walk in to drop off a package, it could be a violation, you know? So like those people took major risk and I took risk too, and I'm going to protect mine. But at the same time, like you have to do right by the industry, you know? Hold on a minute. So, you know, I think they're together when there's an alignment and they're complementary. Well, they're not complementary. Hemp doesn't need marijuana. Okay. Like we don't need it. Marijuana does need us. You know what I mean? Like my products don't need THC to be effective, but those THC products need a little something extra to be effective. So if we're complementary to marijuana, we become a great asset, low cost source of cannabinoids that would just be a giant headache to process in house. No one wants to use up canopy space on CBD strains. It can benefit them so much, and it did. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, hemp becomes the pariah of the industry when it starts threatening that. So it sucks having to, I'm one of the good ones, you know what I mean? Every 2 weeks when I've been doing nothing but minding my business and operating in the actual spirit of why the law was passed. But end rant.
I got nothing, man. That was a great rant. I'm just going to shut my mouth and sit there and bask in that for about 5 seconds.
Cool. I'll join you.
All right. So moving on from that, weird question for you. This goes for both of you. If you were starting from scratch today, no name, no contacts, no fucking anything but what you've learned in your time in the industry, would you stay or would you go? If you stayed, what would you do? If you go, where would you
go? So, meaning I hadn't started a business, would I do it all over again?
Yep, you're looking at starting cannabis now. You have no benefits other than knowledge, no friends,
where the market is right now.
Right today, this second.
So assuming that a business takes, 5 to 7 to 10 years, right? So I'm now looking at that. I'm looking at the market. One of the things, I went out to Benzinga this last year in Chicago. And, as I'm in a transition point, it's like, okay, I want to see where are the headwinds, where are the tailwinds in the industry. Because, when we started raising equity when, there was the .com crash, that was a 72% compression from peak to low. When we started raising money, it was a 92% compression from the peak to that. Then our investors didn't want to be diluted. We needed more money. So now I'm trying to raise debt, trying to take on loans. And this is right when GameStop and, Salon, all the NFTs and all of it. So, investors that are looking at a part of their risk portfolio, it's like, we're going to take this risk and cap out on a, 12% upside. Like, no, but we still did it. And then when we started operating, cannabis was trading, at 12.5, and it's now down to 3 and change. So it was all headwinds. So I wanted to see, what are the tailwinds, and I don't want to hear about federal legalization because I've heard it's, 2 to 3 years for the last whatever. And the reality is, at least in Massachusetts, which is my market, I haven't dug much into others, Jersey a little bit, but, I would take a look. I sort of view this as like a distress, like in my past life, like this is a distress situation, right? So, there were periods of time I made most of my money in volatility, most of my money actually short, even in up markets. That was just how I did things. But there were a couple of years where there wasn't much volatility across the board, right? Like 02, 03, 9, 10. And so you'd start looking for value. And so, the concept is, okay, this is cheap. This is cheap on historical, on, whatever metrics you're looking at and all of it. But the reality is something could stay cheap for a long time. It could get cheaper, or the worst case scenario, it could stop trading or trade less. And now you're in something illiquid and you can't get out of it. Right. And so I sort of look at the Massachusetts industry. I mean, the wholesale pounds are what, $500 now, John, for indoor. Like, so it's like, okay, what gets that to change? And at least in Massachusetts, I mean, you could say a washout of the market, maybe. And, if they increase the number of stores from 3 to 6, and maybe there's some, oligopolist groups that get together and try to peg the price and try to increase costs in certain areas, price in certain areas, maybe that's possible. But the reality is, even if you look at federal legalization, so how does that work, right? So, if the question is tobacco going to get involved, the International Cannabis Conference was held at the International Tobacco headquarters in Europe. So the question is, are they going to be there? They're already there, and they're certainly already in hemp. And so as laws are getting drafted, obviously the amount of money that the tobacco lobby is able to spend far eclipses, Curaleaf and any of these other companies. And so, if I'm the government, the government, when we were kids, was really good at regulating 7 tobacco companies. They're now really good at regulating 4 of them. Do they want to deal with me and my 5? Okay. Deal with my headaches? Right? So I would suspect there's regulatory creep, laws get put up, and that's on the flower side. Anything that looks like a powder, a chemical, anything, pharm is taking that. And then beverages are probably alcohol, right? So and when that happens, great. So you start a cannabis beverage. Do any of the big CPG companies need to buy your beverage that may have, Breeze direct to consumer? I could see something in there, right? Interesting story. Love watching them build it. But Mountain Dew is going to turn, PepsiCo is going to turn on Mountain Dew or whatever works within their stuff. And all of a sudden, you're just going to see it everywhere. They're going to pump millions of dollars into each.
They're going to make Baja Blast instead of Baja Blast, and they're going to dump so much money into it. We've never seen it before, and we're done.
Yep. And so I'm just taking a look and going, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a gentleman who in Massachusetts would be considered a huge cannabis success. He built a business early, sold it to his operators, built another business, is now working on some other stuff. But this gentleman was in real estate. And I asked him, and an older gentleman, and I asked him, I'm like, dude, if you could do this all over again and just stay with what you were doing, not that he's still not doing it, but focused all your money and energy on that, would you have more money or less money? And without a stop, he just started laughing. He went, way more money with way less headaches. And so certainly for anyone listening to this who's, wants to get into the market, God bless you in all of it. If, I could also say that, I have made, as a cannabis operator, the years where I got my full pay, I made the same as I made nominally in 1999, yet the purchasing power is half. So if I were going to go in, John and I were talking about this a little bit earlier offline, it's to go into something else. And I'm looking ancillary, I'm looking at some stuff, but it's this industry, I don't want to say it was set up to fail. And I know a lot of operators I don't think that was the design, but just between 280E,
they would have to know what they're doing to design it to fail. I think it's mostly just ignorance.
Yep. Yeah. So, I certainly, if there was, maybe there's a niche, maybe there's a something, but this is also an industry, and John said it, why do we keep having to reinvent the wheel? Why isn't there a good ERP software in the cannabis industry? Why aren't there just the things that in every normal, it's funny. I'll have phone calls with friends of mine who own businesses, just normal businesses. And it's I forget, you could just get an SBA loan. You could just go to your local bank to drop off cash and take out cash. You can use ADP, not have to pay the green tax. You could, right? And it's so hard for I don't, do you know anyone who's crushing it?
No. And to piggyback on what he's saying, my answer is way more succinct, and that's no. I just wouldn't. But also my perspective was, I'm self-funded. I don't have investors and I don't have partners. So I cracked all my savings into this, and I have reckoned with the fact that I will likely never get it back. And that's something I've accepted. I took a risk, no reward. I do not regret it. But knowing everything I know now, absolutely not. I didn't sign up to become a financial institution, and that's basically what I am. I give out 0% interest loans to companies way more capitalized than me, and then I put on my fucking clown makeup when it's due, and I thank them for maybe adhering to the terms we agreed to. So no, I never just signed up to be a bank, and that's what I feel I am. We expend money, we pray we get it back, and then we just hope that whoever owes us doesn't go into receivership before they clear their bill, and then we hope that their bill comes in before our bill is due. No, it's a clown car. And not just exclusively because of the people in it, but just because, as you said, carelessness from the regulators. I don't think it was, you're right. It wasn't set up to fail. They're not good enough at putting together anything. They just did their best and it failed. And if you want proof, look at every neighboring state, every single state. Massachusetts was the first East Coast state to go legal. Fucking nobody's visiting here to see what works. They're watching what doesn't work and making those amendments.
That's not true. I go to the Netta location or whatever it's called now in Boston because it looks like the Gringotts of weed. I'm not learning from anything. But
no. But what I mean is,
I know
regulators building. Oh, okay, gotcha. But when they put together their programs, like New York has it, so if you owe somebody, your license doesn't get renewed. That's something that should have happened here. Maine did everything right. They said, you know what, we're gonna restrict this to people who 51% of the company must be a Mainer of 4 years, but we're going to legitimize our traditional market, and that's what they did. Do you know what the most you pay in fees is to go legal in Maine to the state? $3-4 grand, I think, is on the high end.
Super cheap.
Yeah,
and they have killer brands. What is it, like High Note and the Highbrow? A couple others that are just like.
But like it's very homey and people love it. New Jersey did everything differently. Like they've created these frameworks that are better. I mean, looking back, no, man. I mean, do you know how much cryptocurrency I sold in 2019 that right now I'd be on an island? I'm not even joking. If I will straight out tell you that I kept my portfolio active, and what I sold, okay, for a fraction would be 9.5 million today. So no, I'm littered with regrets. I'm here. I love what I do, but I don't like my job and who I have to do it with. Not my employees, not my, the people I work with, like not my clients. Everything's good, but just me in general. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean,
he doesn't like you. We already talked about that.
But you know what?
That's literally where we fucking started, man.
Carl and I don't do business. We were in the same town and we didn't really do any business. And that's great. It was actually, it's nice to just have somebody that we never have to think about that. You know what I mean? Most of our friendship was just based on, commiserating over what we have to deal with in this space. But, no, I would not in a million years. This is painful. It sucks. I do not enjoy it. I do great work that I believe in, and I'm put up with near impossible barriers to make it happen. And speaking on what Carl was saying, that's what happens in these free markets. Everything consolidates, everyone gets acquired, all the competition removed, you only have one choice, you have one cable company. That's what happens without regulation on markets. So yes, the FDA right now can permeate changes to every single tobacco brand, every rolling paper, every blunt, every cigar, and the meeting could be held in a Toyota Corolla because they only have 5 people they got to talk to. I come from the tobacco industry. I'm very aware of how quick things can change and how little they have the manpower, ability, or willingness to deal with thousands of operators. So that consolidation, like that's just the American way. It's dead. That whole build a company, work for 10 years, leave it to your kid. No, build something, do it for 2 years, sell it immediately and run. That's the American dream right now. And, no one's going to buy me. Just like what Carl said, I've said it a million times. What is valuable to your company? It's your data and your customer lists. Okay, well, my customer list is a finite list in Massachusetts. You can find my customer list on the fucking government website. Okay, and what's my data? The same data everybody else has. So we're expendable. Anybody could come in. So we rely on the fundamentals of good business: supply chain efficiency, good customer service, transparency, fast turnaround. Like that's what's important. I sell a commodity. So no, I'm completely replaceable. I do not serve a purpose in this market that, without John Nathan, this wouldn't have happened. No. And I completely understand that and grasp that. So I do not marry my businesses. John, I am not a cannabis guy. I'm a guy who is currently working in cannabis. you know, so, and no illusions about it. So no, I would never do this again, but here I am.
Think about that every day. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I think about it every day. I'm like, man, I could be doing this for fishing gear, coffee.
Funny, we should
Bananas.
talk. I'm starting a rod building operation here. I just bought a lathe and threading and all that.
Bro, okay, totally off topic because we have to get
We'll
done
talk
with this. So, like, my dad just found a box of fishing rods at the dump a couple weeks ago. He found 100-year-old collapsible steel fly rods and shit, like stuff that's like. He gave me like a cherry boomstick from the 60s, like
That
fly
is
rod, and I was like, oh, like, okay,
That's awesome.
so we can talk about all that later. All right, final thoughts, guys. We got to wrap up. We're running out on time, as you both know. I got to run to the dentist. So, like,
I got a bolt.
what do we got? Give me the last like 30-second spiel.
Carl, you go first. I don't know what to say, so I just
Nothing?
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, then fuck it.
Yeah,
We're done.
good.
Thank you
I
both
think
for your fucking time. Amazing conversation. Totally derailed every fucking question I wanted to ask, which probably makes this more entertaining than any of the other ones I've ever done.
Free flowing.
Talk to both of you later.
Have a good one. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.